Here.
I never get it right. I'm so sorry. Community Business Member Rader,
Here.
Community Member Benecki,
Present.
Youth Council Member Harris. They're still out
Yeah, they'll be back probably
next time? Okay. Alternate Member Voigt.
Thank you. We do have a quorum present. We did have one excused absence that I saw, and that was Mr. Millman. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Did we have any adjustments to the agenda, Elaine? Are there any conflict of interest disclosures? No, there's no public comment this evening, so we will move on to the approval of the minutes. Are there any questions or concerns in your review of the most recent minutes from our last meeting?
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Update of projects from city staff.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Quick updates for you. As you know and may have experienced, Pennsylvania is being widened. So please excuse our construction out there, but you can kind of see now that the new curbs are set that it's going to be pretty exciting and helpful when it is reopened in moving a lot more traffic. The new Starbucks opened on 4th Street next to the Del Taco. So if you're not familiar with that, you have another place to go buy coffee. And as my boss told me the other day, the pumpkin spice latte is now back. So if you've been waiting for that all year, it's back. So try that out at the new Starbucks. We also got word that the new Mexican food restaurant, Tacos El Checo, had opened this week. So that's something to go test out if you're brave enough within the first week or two. So they'll likely get some kinks worked out in terms of ordering and that stuff. But I'm pretty excited about that one coming into the downtown, and hopefully that's a draw to people to come out within this area. And I'm going to reserve some of the other updates that I would normally talk about on that one for the incentive program update because I have that on the staff report. Signal at Pennsylvania in 1st, and then the signal that's existing at 6th in Pennsylvania will be reworked.
Kyle, is there any anticipated date for the completion of that project?
It's hard to, I know we had anticipated it being done by the end of the calendar year, and then we had a hurricane and all kinds of stuff. So it's hard to gauge, but I think things are on schedule, but if not, it shouldn't be into the second part of the year. It may end up going past New Year's, but within that time frame.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the feedback on the Economic Development Department website, beaumontcabusiness.com.
It's actually .gov, but if you type in .com, it works as well because we were smart enough to buy all of the URLs that were similar. So if you want to type in .com, it's going to take you to .gov, but technically we have the security of the .gov website. But if you haven't looked at it, I have it on my screen. I don't know if the control room can bring up this computer like we did last time. At the last meeting, we demonstrated the new website, and it's for the Economic Development Department. And it was one of the items that was included on the Economic Development Strategic Plan on how to better serve the community, how to market the city to residents, to businesses, and provide resources to existing businesses that we have in the city. So we spent a while, and council was gracious enough to give us money to hire a professional web developer to design this thing. So we've launched it as a soft launch. We talked about it at the last meeting, and we asked the committee members to review it, provide comments on what you like and what you don't like. Let us know if we misspelled anything and stuff like that before we formally push it out and do a new marketing campaign that really makes people aware that this asset is there. So that's all we were going to talk about tonight. I know there were some members that weren't necessarily here at the last meeting. Hopefully you had time to review it. If you'd like, Madam Chair, to go through any of it, we can, or we can open it up to the group for comments and discussion and so forth.
We don't have it on our screen, so we can't really play with it. I sent you one question, and
I forgot, thank you so much for that. I did receive certain direct emails or phone calls between the meetings, so by all means, if you ever see anything that needs fixing, don't wait until the next Economic Development Committee meeting to tell us. Please just call and we'll fix it ASAP. So, Rob, you want that one? It's not touchscreen.
if anyone has any questions, they can certainly direct them to Kyle. My office went through it, and they had a lot of fun with it and thought it was quite interesting and very nice.
I take it these don't have internet? I can't get to,
It's on the big screen now.
Yeah, but that's me controlling it. I don't know if those have internet or not. Yeah.
I think I had to switch it to the guest.
I had a question. A lot of these websites that I've been going to recently, there's a mechanism whereby you can, as a user, comment on your experience. Do we have that capability?
Almost like a feedback or a survey or how your
Right.
experience went.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that now, but we can reach out to the developer and see if that's something that they can add.
I kind of like it in a way. I mean, I've been using, well, when I use a website, it'll pop up and you have the choice. How was your experience? Were your questions answered?
that's okay.
Do you have any comment on improving the website? Now, I don't know if this is done by an independent survey firm that maybe the website contracts with, but I think it's a great idea because you get pretty good immediate feedback from people actually using the site. So I think it'd behoove us to maybe look into having that capability, if it's not a lot of, I don't know, it might be very expensive, I don't know, but it's a good way to get immediate feedback after somebody's used the site to see if it met their needs, so.
Definitely, we will look into that.
Any other questions for Kyle? Thank you. Moving on to the Downtown Business Incentive Program, discussion of existing business incentive programs and program guidelines by Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So back in December of 2022, this group worked to help develop the Downtown Incentive Program or package. And we made a recommendation to City Council, who there went on to formally approve the programs. And then staff got to work developing the program guidelines and all the legal wording to actually implement the programs and to come up with the agreements and the submittal application and those types of things. And we launched the program in around February, March, so late February, early March of 2023. And those programs were for facade improvements, to attract new businesses of certain industry types to the downtown or help existing businesses within those same industry types expand. We provided for pre-application fee waivers for a planning department pre-application process, or through the building department for a building investigation inspection. Also for sewer fee deferral related to, most of the time, a bar or a restaurant or something like that, the ability to defer sewer connection fees. And then lastly, a grease trap program for the existing restaurants that were issued a notice that they had to install these devices that historically the city did not need, but because of the state of California and the Regional Water Quality Control Board's order, were required to install these grease controlling devices. And I think we had the grease presentation at an ECC meeting, which, if you can remember, showed you what happens when grease goes down the pipe. So you can see why these grease interceptors or grease traps are required at grease producing businesses. So to date, last piece. A couple months ago, we reviewed the concept of adding to that package and including a fire sprinkler incentive program in which certain types of businesses, mostly bars or entertainment uses or restaurants that have a certain size or occupant load that wanted to expand, needed fire sprinklers. It's very costly. So this body recommended that council approve a new incentive program to help pay for fire sprinklers, to help offset that barrier of entry for the industry group. So that was approved on September 5th. We're currently working on the legal program guidelines and so forth. And then once we get that, within the next week or two, we're going to be uploading that to the new website so that people can review that program and hopefully apply if in tandem with the new business one, if they're looking at doing that. So to date, we've received 18 applications for the various programs. 2 funding agreements were actually approved by City Council on the September 5th meeting. One was for facade, and the other was for one of the installations of a grease trap. So we've spent some of the money that City Council has allocated to the program. We've spoken to at least, and I try to keep track of them, but there's likely some, that's why I say at least 13. 13 for certain that I spoke to and I wrote it down and I have it tracked. There's probably 2 or 3 others that may have not done it, but those have not submitted an application yet, so they're not included in the first 18. In terms of funding available or applied for, around $350,000 has been applied for, and the applicants are in various stages of those submittals. Like I said, one has hit the finish line. They haven't been funded yet, but they have the agreement. So now they need to do the work, get it inspected, get their permits finalized, and then that's when we issue the reimbursement when we see what they spent on it. And then $100,000 for the new businesses. So that's pretty much 4 applications for new businesses or restaurants, and those are in various stages as well. And $48,000 total has been awarded to the businesses. So at the last meeting, we kind of talked about where we're at in the process, how many applications we received, where we're at with some of them in terms of the process. And there was some dialogue that occurred, and the committee asked for an item to be brought back on why we've seen 18 and what the status is of those and where we're at on getting more of the 18 to the finish line. Like, why are some stopping? Why have some not talked to us in a month or two? Why did we receive an application for one and they never submitted anything else after that? So staff started to reach back out to all of the applicants that we've received and ask for a status update on kind of where we're at and to receive feedback on what has been going on. So what we found, and the bullet points I have here, I'm calling them speed bumps because I couldn't come up with a better term, on what processes we put in place and which things are acting as an impediment or something that slows them down or maybe stop them entirely from proceeding in the process. So I've categorized them by each of the different programs that we have. So the facade improvement program, we had an issue, or we still have an issue, with increased cost of prevailing wage requirements. So because we're using public funds to fund construction of a private entity, the state's labor code is triggered, and therefore prevailing wage needs to be paid to those contractors that are doing the work on the project. So that's a speed bump or an impediment. We've also found out, and maybe I should back up for one quite second, if you allow me to, Madam Chair, so once we receive the applications, we review it for consistency and see if it meets the program objectives. And if it does, we schedule this, we call it a rehab determination walkthrough, in which most of the departments within community development go out to the site and meet with the applicant to see if there's anything else that we see that needs to be fixed while we're going through this process. One of them we found, unfortunately, quite often is unpermitted work at that business within that structure or other structures or at the property in general. So one of our policies has been, we'll help them with the facade improvements on the building to make it look nicer and to redo the doors and the paint. But if there's an illegal water heater in the back, we're not moving forward with the facade program until some of these unpermitted things that don't meet building code are satisfied. They can do it as part of this, although we'll not pay for that, but they need to show us that they're planning on fixing, in that scenario, the unpermitted water heater as part of the program in order to move forward. And unfortunately, we're just seeing those kind of pop up. As you know, the downtown has a lot of older buildings, and codes have changed. Unpermitted work is done on the weekend and so forth. But when we go through, we're identifying those and then letting the applicant or the landowner and the business owner know that those things need to be fixed alongside the new work. And then we have, just sake of how Beaumont was developed and when it was developed, is we have unreinforced masonry buildings. In history, those were perfectly fine, and then we got to seismic codes and realized that we needed to make these buildings safe in the event of a seismic event. And we have buildings that have not done that. So some people are looking at it like, I really want to get in and do this one, but they find out it's unreinforced masonry. In order to occupy safely, it needs $80,000, $90,000 worth of improvements without the facade. That's just to make the building safe. So we have that. And then lastly, limitations on residential use types and density allowances. And that means basically we have certain areas that allow residential, some that allow a residential house but don't allow multifamily, and then the densities. And I think we've talked about the densities before at this group in terms of what the maximum is or what the minimum is, those types of things. And I'm going to come back to some of these, but I want to at least run through them. The Business Attraction Expansion Program, we set it up as a forgivable loan in which the businesses, and that's that sheet I had sent, or I passed out to you. These are the industry groups, those 5. If they open, they apply for the money, and they stay in business for 3 years, the loan is forgiven. So we set that up. As you can see, when you flip it over, those are the risk assessment items that need to be submitted with their application, or after their application is deemed eligible. We ask for these things. And it's robust and possibly difficult to achieve for certain types of businesses, especially entrepreneurs that have not operated a restaurant or a bar before. We have building code requirements related to fire sprinklers. That was something we identified. We were triggering that requirement to put in fire sprinklers on new buildings, or not new buildings, on existing buildings for a new use. So a new restaurant going into a building that wasn't a restaurant, it triggered fire sprinklers. So what did we do? We came up with the new incentive program. And then lastly, overall lack of vacant space in the downtown. Our downtown consultant has run the numbers and told us what our vacancy rate, and they're like, wow, it's really surprising that you don't have that many vacancies in the downtown. And while that's a blessing on one hand, because we don't have vacant space and it doesn't become an eyesore, it also doesn't necessarily help Daniel and I find space for someone when they call me and say, hey, I want 3,000 square feet on a corner. Well, there is none. Well, call me when it comes up. And then we dealt with one about a month or two ago where it was vacant for like 14 days before someone signed a new lease. It's like, it went that fast. Before we could make the calls or someone was on vacation, we called a restaurant from Redlands. And the gentleman was on vacation. Before he came back from vacation, the space was leased. So it's a little bit of a challenge. And then lastly, the grease trap program, we found a couple speed bumps. One, it was difficult to find contractors to actually do that specialized plumbing work. And then two, the cost is high, and some of the applicants that are running these small restaurants are not able to afford the 50%, which is how the program is designed, is half and half. And then lastly, one of the larger impediments on this one is that we're finding the landowners who own the land and the building are sometimes not willing to assist the tenant on the improvements. They feel that the tenant is the person running the business. It's their business that has triggered this requirement, so it should be their burden to bear in terms of providing the improvements. So what I'm going to do is go back through them now that I've spelled them out and talk about some of the things we've done to help some of these. So the first one was the prevailing wage requirements. And Madam Chair, you know this because we had talked about it. We found one scenario in which may help. It won't help in all instances, but it may help. And on some projects, we find that the material costs to do the construction are about half or sometimes more than half of the cost to do the project. So the city's looking at paying half, 1-for-1, up to the $50,000. So if an applicant can show us that, let's use a project that's $50,000, for example. So our half would be 25, the applicant's half would be 25. So if they can show us material costs for what they're gonna do at the 25,000, we can write into the contract that it's for materials only. So there is no labor, we're just paying for the materials for the project. And therefore, the labor laws don't come into play. And if they do, the agreement says that the applicant needs to comply with labor laws. So that's one of the ideas that we've come up with and we're implementing.
But you would pay 100% of the materials cost or 50% of the material cost?
We would pay up to 100% of the materials cost if that was half. So we have that going for us. I don't have any quick solutions on the unpermitted work or the unreinforced. The limitations on residential use types and the densities are something that we're working on with the downtown consultant, GHD. So we're looking at market forces, we're looking at properties, and the implementation plan is going to have some recommendations on zoning, use types, what's allowable, what's not allowable, densities, minimum, maximum, and so forth. So we're looking at that in the future. The grease trap program, when I said it's hard to find contractors, what we did was we reached out to a company. We found a company that sells the device, the thing that goes in the ground. And they had a good list of people that install the things because they're coming to them to buy them. So we're able to provide this list. We're not recommending anyone because we don't do that at the city. But what we did was we've compiled this list and we continue to add to it of contractors within this area, in this region, that actually install these devices. So that if someone says, well, I'm having a hard time finding them, like, well, you can try these and see what prices they get so they can find some bids on that. So we're having some success with that one. I talked about the fire sprinklers. So the thing I handed out was the forgivable loan requirements. And what I want to do now is, now that you have the report on kind of where we're at, is open up to the group for discussion on and ideas on how to expand some of these programs, how possibly to change them or modify them, with the intent of meeting the goals of the program, which is to incentivize investment within the area, to attract certain types of businesses to the area, and to increase pedestrian activity, have more customers come to the area. And so it's not just a couple. And overall, if we continue to do that, then we'll have a better area with a critical mass or a draw. So that concludes my report.
Looking at the investment, the 5 categories. Somebody wants to open up a nail salon, a jewelry store, a real estate office. Where do they fall in? Because it says the first 4 are food-related or, or drinking, still food.
Yes.
But the 5th one says entertainment uses. And I'm thinking, what about someone who's not entertainment, not a bookstore, but like that?
Those don't qualify how the program is established today. We had to set up certain types of industries that we thought were the most impactful to the downtown. So which ones would create a change more than others? And it has to be things that people want to go do. It has to be places that people go hang out at for a while, or could go to others that complement each other. And I'm not saying that people don't want to go do their taxes or they don't want to go get their nails done, but like how a downtown would develop, it would be more complementary. If we had a bunch of restaurants, the likeliness of a nail salon succeeding within that area is likely higher than if it's just a standalone nail salon with really nothing that's complementary around it, because you might not even know it was there. So that's kind of the idea, is we had to pick which ones we thought were the best investment for the city and the city council.
Do we look at the, trying to think how to say this, the impact that one business has on its neighboring businesses that might produce potentially health issues? As an example.
Through the municipal code, we do those types of things. We have building codes, we have fire safety codes, we have the zoning ordinance and the other various municipal codes that talk about compatible uses, like you don't have a bar next to a school, those types of things. Schools don't typically locate near a freeway because of things like that, but not for the incentive programs that we're talking about tonight. We're really looking at just attracting things to the downtown with this type of program. And then once they do, and they're interested, then they start working with the other departments at City Hall to make sure that it's built safely, it works within the zoning, it's approved by the planning commission if it's a new building, those types of things.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? Alan, what are you thinking about when you talk about health issues? Other businesses outside of the list of 5, and then you went to health issues. I don't know if you were talking, if that was related to nail salons or.
It could be.
Okay.
You can't hear me.
If I can offer some additional, maybe information along these lines. So if something is considered an entertainment use, it typically requires a conditional use permit. As part of that process, we're required to notify property owners within a 300-foot radius, which would include adjacent businesses, that a proposed use is going to be considered by the city's planning commission. So in the case of something like a nail shop, that's generally not considered entertainment, and that would be a permitted use, like a retail use. But in something like the cigar lounge that we just had at Planning Commission, the last meeting was Cigar Lounge? Oh, it's actually going tonight. Okay, there we go. I knew it was somewhere on the agenda. So we have publicly noticed all property owners within 300 feet, and we put a notice in the newspaper as we're required to do by law. So, and we have heard from some of the businesses, and it's been some that are like, yay, it's coming, and then some that have had questions. And so we communicate with them through the planning department about, of course, answering their questions and concerns that they have, but also encouraging them to come and let their voices be heard at the planning commission, so that the planning commissioners, those that would make the decision, would also be able to hear directly from people who may have concerns about a proposed use. So a conditional use permit, again, is somewhat discretionary, so it's not a given that it would be approved right away, and we do have to consider compatibility of use and all kinds of other things that go in with the project analysis.
Okay, thank you.
I have just two things. Unreinforced masonry buildings, I haven't heard any talk about that for a long time. Do we have a considerable amount of those buildings here? And have they not been retrofitted?
I wouldn't call it a considerable amount. I would say maybe off the top of my head, 10, but it's 10 that are like prominent on 6th Street that when you look at them, they don't look very nice. And when people are thinking about getting money for a facade, they're like, I think I can make that look really nice. Or I want to get in there and operate this business. And then they find out that's unreinforced. And then unfortunately, it's just the cost of doing that is significant.
So the retrofitting is addressed when a business goes in, when a new business goes in.
Yes, ma'am.
And then am I correct that temporary relief has been given for downtown on the parking requirements? Is that correct?
Yes.
That's good.
So parking was one, and that's something that has been temporarily relieved as we work through the downtown revitalization plan. So right now, that's not going to be a hindrance of a new restaurant coming in or a bar coming in. Now, when we meet with these people, we're still cognizant of the fact that people need to park somewhere. So, and the businesses themselves know that as well. But it's not us just having an arbitrary number that says it has to be 20, and if it has 17, then no. Or you need a variance for the 17. So we have some flexibility in that. But, I mean, a bar's gonna need some parking in order to have people to go there to buy things.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You got several problems, and they're not minor problems, obviously. Lack of commercial space, obviously. I mean, you got a lot of old buildings, you got some few vacant lots. There are existing businesses in there. I'm sure the property owners, I mean, they may have been long-term, pretty much long-term lessees in there. It seems to me, and I know Lloyd has been very instrumental in bringing the community downtown together, and they've had several meetings. I'm just wondering if we really have total buy-in with the property owners, people that actually own the property downtown here. Because to me, if they're totally committed to getting this thing done and getting this downtown revitalized and getting some excitement, and I think restaurants is a great idea, way to go, because every community I've been to all over Southern California, the older communities, they have thriving properties in the downtown area that really cater to the entertainment, the food industry, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if we had the buy-in of the property owners, that when somebody came that was interested in doing something with the downtown, and we could get to those property owners and say, look, you know, you got a property now that you're maybe making $500 a month rent or $1,000 or whatever, you could increase that amount by, bringing this new entity in here, and it would be a win-win situation, I'm just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit to see if there might be a way to try to encourage our property owners to, and I know a lot of them are property owners that probably own this property, probably generations. But something needs to be done to get a mindset that we're willing and able to accommodate people that are willing and able to provide these kind of businesses in our community, so.
Can I speak to that? Chair? Yeah, a lot of the property owners downtown, haven't been to Beaumont in years. They live in, Orange County. And I think, I've reached out to a couple that I've met. I didn't go looking for them. And, they're comfortable with the money that they're making right now. I think an idea would be, we set aside $500,000 for this program, and how much would you say we've spent so far?
48.
Okay. We have a freeway that goes through our town that has tens of thousands of people going every day. And a lot of them are driving from either the desert or to the desert, from Orange County or to Orange County to go to work. And for businesses, I think what we should do is take some of that money and put some billboard ads up. I think what we need to do is to get people to come in and buy the properties, because there are a few new property owners in the Beaumont area, and they're excited when they buy the property because they know what's coming. And I think, a billboard, I've looked at it once, and I think they're like $1,500 a month, maybe $1,000 a month. But you put something up there that, we have business expansion programs, we're starting a downtown. Why are you driving an hour to work every day? I think at this point, we should try and, we can deal with the current businesses as much as we can, but you've got your hurdles. And those folks understand those, and they made business decisions. But if you start getting more people, more demand coming in here, I think you can then, you'll have new property owners, and you'll have people excited about where we're going. So that was an idea I've had for a while, is that, we've got, I don't know how many people go. I've asked people, no one knows for sure, but I think it's at least probably 100,000 a day. I wouldn't say it's much.
It's
Yeah.
for certain over 100 a day.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, again, people drive every day and see the sign and it says, hey, bring your business to Beaumont. We'll help you get off the ground. We got $50,000 for new businesses, something like that. I think people might, you got people who do food trucks, things like that are going to say, well, wait a second, why am I doing a food truck when I can, start a business in what's going to be a new downtown? So I thought that was an idea, and it's easier for me to present some of those ideas here and have the committee move it forward to council than for me to present it at council. But that was my thought. But I agree with you. We need the property owners' buy-in.
I don't know how the internal workings of the city go. Do we have a promotional budget? Do we have a promotional person? I mean, like a city elevated, that was designed and promoted. And
We
do
have I'm sorry.
Just curious to how we would go about that.
I think you would hire a recruiter, somebody who knows marketing and put together a whole program, and we can do an RFP on that and get a whole bunch of different ideas on what to do.
Madam Chair, if I may follow up with what Councilmember White is saying. So council has also allocated money for us to do a marketing plan. So after the first of the year, we'll be likely releasing the RFP for exactly what Councilmember White's talking about. So developing a marketing plan that will then guide the next steps that staff would take and let council know what how would they achieve their goals from a funding standpoint? So what would we be requesting from them in the next budget year, right? So if we want to do X, Y, Z, this is, what it would take. Council's also, at the last meeting, directed staff to go ahead and bring forward an ordinance amendment to the sign code as well as the outdoor lighting code that will help facilitate or start to facilitate some of the replacement of the regular billboards with potential for electronic billboards. So not saying we're opening it wide up yet to just have electronic billboards everywhere, but we have a replacement program that's in place. And up until just the recent direction, we had said, no more billboards. So we've got some changes coming forward that will help start kicking that off. And then if I can just take a moment to compliment staff regarding outreach to property owners. So I will say Kyle and Daniel both spend an enormous amount of time calling property owners every week, going out and visiting property owners in person, trying to do exactly what you're talking about doing, trying to explain to them the city wants to help you succeed. We've got money here. It's $1 million between last year's budget and this year's budget that we've not fully encumbered yet, even a fraction of that. So we have a lot of money still available for that. How can we help you? And, like Councilmember White said, they've been here a long time, a lot of them. Some of them don't really necessarily want to, be bothered with it. But we tend to get a better response from the business operators, generally speaking, than the business owners or than the property owners, which is unfortunate because we really need the buy-in from both. But I know Kyle and Daniel, they're walking the streets. You guys probably see them out there. They're on the phone a lot. I know planning staff, building and safety or building officials back here, she's been out. Staff really has made a concerted effort over the past year to go out in person, meet the owners, shake the hands, talk to them about all that we can help them do if they will participate in the programs.
Madam Chair, I had a question. Councilmember White, you mentioned about the billboard and the cost of that per month. Was that going to come out of the half of the 500,000?
Well, I think
Or
that was my thought. If we need to, because when we as a council approved the $500,000, it was like, well, this will just be starting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're committed to this, and as I think Ms. Taylor pointed out, we added more to it this year. So I think the marketing, if you could tie it into the downtown business project that we're starting to do or trying to do, that definitely that could pay for marketing out of there. Outside of I think the marketing plan you're talking about is not just for downtown, it's for the city in general.
Right, and we would utilize what we're doing with the downtown revitalization plan, the marketing plan, but absolutely, since we have nearly $1 million still in that budget, marketing could become another incentive. Guess what? You want to come operate your business here in Beaumont, we will advertise for you, on XYZ billboard or something like that. So that's another potential program that we could create. If that's something that comes out of here and moves to council, or if that's direction that council gives to staff as we continue to move forward. That $1 million essentially is for incentive programs, and that's for us to incentivize however this committee and the council sees would be the best opportunity to do so. So that potential is there.
Oh, well, I read that the Highland Springs billboard, that 70-foot billboard is going down to 50, and that the owner of that wants to go electronically. If that's correct, what part of that is the city involved with? It sounds like he owns that.
Yeah, he does. So the new billboard policy in our ordinance that has not yet been officially approved.
Yeah.
Requires that if you want to put up a digital billboard, you can, but you have to take one down. So we won't have more billboards than we have now, but digital billboards, they're safer because people don't have to climb up there to replace
sure.
something. And they're also more profitable. If you've seen the ones in Banning, they're advertising Banning businesses. And I think you could go along with what you're saying and offer, some marketing to the local businesses while at the same time presenting the fact that, hey, we want more. And here's some of the businesses that are here now. But yeah, I definitely think that the marketing could come out of that money.
Yeah, well, that sounded like it was just one, digital is going to replace what's there now, so he's not, it's just the same.
Yeah, he's.
I mean, that's what the article I read said.
Yeah, he was telling us in council that he was gonna put both sides. One of his problems was the side on this side, when you're driving to Banning. When he put it up, there were no other billboards. Well, now you can't see it because there's a billboard in the way. But he doesn't have to put it up right there. So, you know, if he wants to buy property or get a lease somewhere else, he can do it elsewhere. But one thing that he has done for Banning is he's opened, marketing it up to chamber members. You know, and he has said he would do that. I think he said that in a chamber,
You might do that for our chambers, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
So we could potentially advertise our incentive program on that billboard. Do we have any timelines at all on that?
No, I know he'll get it up as soon as he can, because it's, they're very profitable. And this is-
So if we were interested in just a standard billboard advertisement, it'd be curious to see, just to do like a test for a month or two to see if there were any results from it, you know, rather than going out to I mean, I don't know how, but you want to do an RFP and it's a, you know, sounds to me like that's a big deal and it's, would take a long time. I'm thinking of how could we help do that more quickly to see if we could get something up within, you know, maybe 3 months on a billboard,
I think we could do
And there's-
something in the interim
just to see if, I mean,
to
it
see if it
sounds.
works or to try other things.
It sounds wonderful. It sounds like if we could do it at least for a couple months to see if we got any reaction. And then we could know if we wanted to do it on a more permanent basis.
Would we like to advertise our Beaumont incentives on Banning's billboard?
That's what my suggestion was gonna
Well-
be, see what it costs to put it on that one.
So staff can actually reach out to, there are a couple electronic billboards around, not just in Banning, but I know, sorry, Rob.
You know, they just kicked off their downtown revitalization, but
Yes.
they're like 4 years behind us. So,
But we can reach out and find out if there's an opportunity to maybe do a test run or something and what those costs would look like. Kyle or Daniel can,
I think you would definitely need some marketing expert to come in and say, okay, you know, we want to get, how do you guys want to get the message out? And then they put the artwork together.
Yeah.
Getting the billboards is not hard.
yeah, there's
Could
plenty
we-
of opportunity.
Who owns the electronic billboard in Banning? Is the same, is it AMG?
Alec, he owns one of, does he own both of them? There's two there.
I'm not sure who owns them. I know they're operated, I think, by Lamar.
No,
Or
Alex
Outdoor?
owns the first one that,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Alex is the
Guy
guy
who
who
owns
the
the big,
Beaumont side.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says we couldn't advertise on the Banning.
I think it'd be great. But no, but again, a static billboard would do what we need to do right now. I wouldn't be holding off until we have a digital version.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really even have to be in Beaumont. I mean, it could be in Yucaipa or on your way up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what we want to do, but how, you know, I'm just trying to get it, how do we help make it happen quicker? Can we make a recommendation to city council?
I think if we all agreed, we could make a recommendation to city council.
Okay, do we have anybody that wants to motion that?
I think in general, I think what we would like to present is a concept of a marketing program for downtown that would involve billboards. So that's my motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
They're gonna love me now.
we did something, that's great.
City
Yeah.
Manager Gibbs is watching right now, and I'm expecting any minute to
We've been,
get some more direction here.
we've been reviewing our sign ordinance. We changed it about 6 years ago, but it's been about 4 years, 2 or 3 campaign cycles that we've completely redone our sign ordinance. So
Well, signs
one thing
are
you might all
changing
find
every day. interesting,
interesting, and it shouldn't be just shooting up, but one thing you might all find interesting, and I, it shouldn't be just shooting up, but one thing you might all find interesting, and I, it shouldn't be just shooting up, but one thing you might all find interesting, and I, it shouldn't be just shooting up, but We're gonna only allow the campaign signs on specific roads. And we're not limiting the numbers, we're not, and we're saying, but it's the main roads. Why, why put them in Fairway Canyon, Tournament Hills? You can put them all on, Sixth Street, Beaumont Avenue, First Street, Second Street. So, so it'll be a whole different campaign season next year. You won't see them in your neighborhoods, except for the ones on your yard, so.
Oh, that's great.
Would
That
it be,
sounds very
would it be
interesting.
helpful for this committee if staff brought back to the next meeting, sort of a update on the sign code
I think that
changes?
would be great. I think.
Okay, and then how about, would you also like an update on the replacement program for billboards? So you have a little better understanding on how that might work?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
We
am
can-
sure that Lennar will be real quick to move to digital. And they own, what, maybe 80% of the,
They may own all of the ones that are in town, so it's an old agreement. Kyle was probably the only one here when that actually got put into effect, but we have, a file on it that talks about the replacement program and what the ratios are and how it works. So staff will put some, information together on both of these, and, we'll bring it to your next meeting.
Wonderful, that's wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. Kyle, do you have anything else?
I do, but Rob also, I think, you still,
I was just gonna make a quick comment that, as you're looking to promote downtown, particularly food and entertainment and bars, et cetera, that, and I'm sure the city's gonna have this as part of their plan, that social media can be a very powerful way to get the message out in a lower cost way. And things can spread like wildfire on there, and both good and bad. But I noticed that with food and entertainment and restaurants, that's a real popular media to get promote individual restaurants, and it can be a way for the downtown area to get some promotion about what's available and what's happening and what the hot restaurants are. So just food for thought.
you just triggered something. What about if we offered some kind of support for businesses wanting to do their own marketing as part of instead of a facade or a grease trap, maybe they need help with websites or social media?
As like another incentive type program?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah, staff will take all of this discussion and come back with some additional ways we can tie into the incentive programs.
so the last thing I had, and the reason I passed out the attraction expansion submittal list was for you to kind of look at the back. And at the beginning, or earlier in the meeting, I talked about how you have the forgivable loan requirements that are robust and difficult to achieve for certain business startups. And we designed this program to be a loan, but there's nothing that says it has to be a loan. So if we're running into a problem where some of these businesses that want to open a restaurant, they can't, but they've never had one before, right? Like, so a new entrepreneur that has a great, whatever dish it is, they can't give us a balance sheet, they can't give us profit and loss, they can't give us an income statement because they haven't opened yet. They likely aren't going to have collateral because most of their savings, they're intending to invest into this business to see if it works. They sure have a commitment. They may or may not have management experience. Hopefully they'll have a business plan. If they don't, they can come to one of our seminars with SBDC on how to write a business plan. We had like 16 or 17 people at the one that Rob's folks and the SBDC helped us put on. And then we get to the credit history or credit report. So we started thinking about the loan. It's hard for some of these people to do that, or it's a lot of work for us to do that. It's a lot of work for us to review these things, and then some of us have training in reviewing these things, but either way, I got to like the character, right? And so what if someone has a 640 credit score? Who are we to say that that's acceptable or that's not acceptable? Like, it's not the 730 or higher that you always see that you get your best rate on. But what if their ding on credit had absolutely nothing to do with running a business? Or what if they just have low credit because they haven't been in debt very long? You know how when you first start, your credit score is low because you just haven't borrowed money? Why should that be something that hurts them? And then we got to thinking about the loan from an accounting perspective when I was talking to some of my colleagues over in finance. It's like, so if we get one of these to the finish line, how are we gonna book that on the books? It's gonna be a liability, but then after 3 years, it magically just goes away. And then how do we start looking at that from an accounting and a finance perspective, which is why our assistant finance director's here tonight in case you guys have any questions on that process, because I'm not an expert when it comes to, I passed my accounting classes in college, but I'm not an expert like Lisa is. I'm like, well, maybe we think about changing the loan to a grant. And it's not a grant that has no strings attached. Not like you submit an application and we hand you a check for $25,000. We can ask for some of these things and review them to make sure it's a good business plan. It's a business that looks like it's gonna make sense. It still needs to meet the criteria on the front where it's an upscale dining environment, and people ask me what that is. And I went to lunch the other day in Calamasa, don't tell anyone, but it was at the Thai chili restaurant. I don't know if anyone's been there, but if you have been there, it's not the most sophisticated dining environment, but it's nice. It has nice booths. It has nice features on the walls. Sorry, those types of things. So that would likely qualify. So we started thinking about it, like in order to help finance, not track these things. The worry and why we went with a loan is because we were worried that we would be at risk of losing that money on a business that didn't pan out or failed. But I was thinking about it, like this person that we're asking to come in here and expand their business, or someone that is trying to put in a new business, they're at risk. That's part of their game, is they're at risk. So we're asking them to take on risk. But we designed the program in such a way that we're limiting our risk. So maybe we step up and we say, look, if you meet certain things that we're looking for, if it seems like a good idea, you open, so you're not gonna get the money before you open and then you leave and go to the Bahamas on our dollar. So you open, and then we give you $25,000 and use it for your business. And if it fails, we tried. Like, they tried, they're not gonna just do it and then fail on purpose. That's not gonna be their intent. Their intent when they're investing this money, is to succeed. So if it fails, well then, we tried. Because right now, we're trying, and they get to this and they're overwhelmed, and they're like, I can't do this. I can't submit this stuff to the city. Or maybe they know what their credit score is and they're scared to submit it. So just an idea to throw out there. That's some of the thoughts that we've been having here at the staff level, and talking to some of the applicants about why some of these, like I said, we've received 4 of them, why none of those have made it to the finish line thus far.
Well, it seems like to me, Kyle, and I wrote that down before you even said loan to a grant. If you do your due diligence for the grant application for these businesses, and you have the right people making the right decisions, and one of the parameters is that they actually open before they receive that grant. But I think when they look at the whole situation, like I said, they're overwhelmed, they see another loan, just the fact it's called a loan just probably scares a lot of them to death. And so if it was a grant situation, but a strict adherence to the guidelines for that grant, you might get better results. And I think you're saying that.
That's something we can explore and bring back with the rest of our updates.
Well, even if it is a loan, and they go belly up, we're never gonna get the loan paid back anyways, so it's gone.
Not likely, because even if
Yeah.
they had a business loan, we'll likely be in second or third position. If they don't have assets, like, are we gonna take their Hummer or their Camry? No, because probably the lender in the first position is gonna be taking that collateral or something
Yeah.
like that, so. Yeah, let alone the actual process to go through. I can't even imagine how much time it would take to take someone's car on a incentive program loan.
Yeah, the restaurant business, as you all know, is one of the most high-risk businesses to run, open, and operate. But having said that, if your really intent is to try to get the numbers up in terms of people who are willing to take risks with you, you're in essence creating a partnership. The city is going into partnership with these potential new business owners. And if you look at it in that sense, in a partnership relationship, there's commitments on both sides of the partnership. And I think if you structure the commitments that are aligned with results, in other words, phased-in type results, you don't expect a business to open up and, 100 people show up the first day. A lot of businesses survive on rumor, word of mouth, promotions. But if you enter into this partnership with these defined, measurable results, I think you'll have better success in succeeding. And a grant's a good way to go because it's not as scary as a loan. But the grant should be specific, it should be tied to results, and the people entering in this business ought to work towards those goals and those results. And I think with that in mind, you'll probably end up having more successes than you'll have failures. So that's my 2 cents.
Madam Chair? I did. Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Kyle, one of the things you might consider as opposed to a grant is a quick payoff in the sense of you get a loan, business gets a loan, and say to the business owner, you make payments on this set up however it's set up for X number of years, 3 years, 5 years. If you're pay on time and you're conscientious, at the end of that period of time, the city will wipe out the debt. So it functions like a grant, whether it's 3 years or 5, but not excessive, but it gives them the responsibility to, they are responsible for it and they have to do it. And if they fail, okay, that's a failure, city looks at it a different way. But if they continue in business for that 3 or say 5 years, now they have an incentive. I'm gonna do even better.
Yeah, that's kind of how it's structured right now. But whether it's a loan that's forgiven in 6 months or 3 years or 5 years, when you design it and you write up the legal stuff, we have to treat it as a loan. And therefore, we're asking for, it's, for lack of better terms, underwriting for a loan like a financial institution. Now, we're not going to that extent because it doesn't have like criteria. Like I said, the credit score, we don't have like an automatic disqualification. So it's still subjective, but it's just the time to do that and who to say why, those types of things. And we're not a lending institution, not a bank that has people that are doing underwriting on a daily basis. So we could do that, but even if it's forgiven after a month, we still have to look at it as a loan legally at the beginning, which is causing the impediment. Is because, like Mr. Rader said, people are scared of it.
Yeah, when you see the word loan, does the city have any other purposes when they loan out for anything? I've never heard of it, because they're not in the loaning business, that type of business, but I don't know why, because I'm sure the auditors just would go crazy overseeing this and trying to rationalize it.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make sense. And I thought it was a grant system before, till you mentioned the loan thing, and that's, it would be scary if you're, with all the stuff you've got to do with now, you got to deal with a loan that you may or may not be forgiven. You just don't know. And then that's pressure on you. If you're not successful, then maybe they won't forgive the loan, and then you just have to keep paying. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we've not done any loans that I'm familiar with. I know other cities have revolving loan funds. That's a thing in the economic development profession is you have, and sometimes cities use CDBG money for that. They have a revolving loan fund. So they loaned out money to certain types of things. And then when they get repaid that money, then they loan it out to another business to stimulate. We used to do it with RDA, those types of things. But in all those scenarios, I don't know of any city that does that themselves. They typically third-party contract with underwriters to perform that analysis to then loan the city money. And if, see, Rob?
No, I like the idea of looking at grants, making it a little bit easier. Also, I think Mr. Beneke made a good point that they're benchmarks and results oriented. I think we could build an incubator at the Grace Building, but I don't know where the Grace Building's going at this point. Still seems to be moving along pretty slow, but I'm not a patient person always. So.
Does this committee need to make a recommendation to city council for that, or?
What I think we'll do on this one is, because this was just some thoughts being thrown out there, right? I have not necessarily vetted this completely with legal yet, because I didn't want to go that far for them. And actually, because once we call, we have to pay, right? So I'm conscious of not trying to run up the legal bill on things that the committee hasn't said, hey, go ahead and look at. So now that I think there's consensus on, let's look at the loan to grant concept, is I'll run it by them to see if they think it's viable or possible. And then once we determine that, we'll bring back some ideas on paper that we can recommend to council, if that's okay.
Sounds like a wonderful plan. Do you have anything else, Kyle?
No, ma'am.
It says here, recommendation, receive and file the report.
Yes, we've provided direction, just,
We're done.
you don't
We did
even
that.
need to do a receive and file if you don't want to, but sometimes we just throw that on there so that you've received it, and then we'll just file it in as part of the agenda.
So will you be bringing back next month what legal says might be preferable, by the loan to grant option or
Yes.
that type of thing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anything else before we just do our reports? Anything? Okay.
I want to get back to downtown in regards to the streetscape and infrastructure, and also the idea of city-owned property. Maybe there's an opportunity to do something with city-owned property that could support this effort. Right now, people don't see anything happening. And I think if you put, excuse me, some money into streetscape, even if it's just 1 or 2 blocks, and you kind of get things looking a little different downtown, it might just be the incentive to get people to say, hey, there's going to be a downtown revitalization. Right now, I mean, it's same old, same old. And I know everybody's doing their effort and working really hard to make it happen, and I think it will happen. It takes time.
No, you're 100% right. We just find ourselves in this weird interim period, right? Where we in this room know what's going on. City council know what's going on. We hired GHD to do the revitalization and implementation plan. And council invested a lot of money in that document, but we're not done yet. So we've seen some of the original, or some of the draft stuff come over, like the economic analysis has been performed, and we're at that inflection point in which we're now starting to draft and design the streetscapes. We're just not at that finish line yet, and I know we're anxious to be there. What we are gonna be doing, and I finalized it with GHD last week, is setting up another downtown business meeting in October. If you want to put a save the date, it's probably going to be on like the 24th or the 25th, at least to the best of my knowledge thus far. I'm just squaring away some details on that. And we're going to be presenting kind of some work from GHD that's been done to date before we build that into it coming here for formal recommendation into Planning Commission.
Okay.
So we're getting there. I know we're all, if you're anxious, I'm anxious, because we know we're getting to that, and then we'll be able to present to council what it's gonna look like, and then take that next step to do some interim improvements in the streetscape while we build towards the permanent improvements.
So, just to respond to you, we approved $5 million for acquisition property. So we're already looking, we're actively looking for product or property in the downtown. We also committed to $1 million to redo the lights in the downtown area. So those are things that we can do right now. It's already been budgeted for. But it's just, like you said, it takes forever.
No,
But you're right, I think if we just went through and did the lights, I mean, that right
That's
away is
what
the
you'll-
kind of streetscape.
Yeah, that's incentive right there.
Yeah, yeah. But no, we are actually looking very aggressively at properties that are available.
having worked in government for many, many years, I know things take a long time oftentimes. It does get frustrating, but in the end, you know, if you do it right, plan it right, it's a tremendous benefit to everyone, so.
Okay, shall we move on to reports? Mr. Moran, do you have a report? No. Mr. White, do you have a
No.
report? Mr. Beneke?
No.
Mr. Rader?
Good, Madam Chair.
Mr. Brown?
Not tonight.
Nothing? Mr. Copeland?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
No, ma'am.
Miss Christina?
You know, I could talk a lot more about a lot of stuff, but no, nothing tonight.
Thank you. Well, this was wonderful. I will let you know that State of the City is sold out. I have 2 secret seats, so if there's anybody that absolutely has to come, I have 2 seats. And we have someone coming from the state of California for insurance on October 13th for that Good Morning Beaumont breakfast. I hope you'll all be there. And that's all I have to report. We do have topics for future agendas, introduction to new business program, what that is, and the RCT passenger rail project. Might be kind of interesting, too. So we'll bring that up. I know you're involved with that. Anything else that anyone else has? Thank you. I call this meeting closed at 5:14.
Good meeting.
I think so.